stage for content?
So I'm Adam. I work down at the Detroit Zoo, and this here is David, who works at the Belle Isle Nature Zoo. This is our second year in the Science Olympiad. Last year we did one focusing on Michigan mammals. This year it is focusing on reptiles and amphibians of the Americas, and that goes from North America down to South America. So for the local species, we have the text known as Amphibians and Reptiles of the Great Lakes Region. This is by James H. Harding. And Dave, can you show those?
So I forgot to bring my book with me today, but there's two, like if you're out buying the book, there's two different ones. They have different colors, same material in each book, just has a different color. Or a different cover. This is what it looked like originally. That's what the new one looks like. I'll pass these around.
This comes from the University of Michigan's press. So you can actually go to their website and order it directly from them, but they're also available on Amazon. There's more so available on the university's website. So you just look up University of Michigan Press, and you type in this book like in Google, it comes up. You can call them directly and order it that way if you'd like. And that is a for sure way, because I actually called them and was making sure that they had enough copies for potentially, 2 books per team.
FYI, it's all out of stock
On Amazon? Okay. So you guys bought up, whoever has already purchased it probably bought the one.
So if you just go online and type in Amphibians and Reptiles of the Great Lakes Region, there's other websites where you can purchase books
there are other sites
too. So I saw a couple even on eBay today when I checked. So there's other like used book websites. They're just not well known as Amazon. I think Barnes and Noble even has used books.
They're on 3 to 4 week back order at Barnes and Noble. All of
For
them.
Someone said it last
I think they have one at Ann Arbor.
They have a used
library.
Barnes and Noble has like a used book section too that you can order used books through.
Yeah.
Realistically speaking, how imperative is it to have that text? I mean, using resources elsewhere.
So one way to get around that is that you could, if you find it in a library, we're creating questions for the Great Lakes region off of that book. So anything that covers any animal on the Great Lakes region list, this first list, it actually says the title of the book at the top. So there is a 2-part list. The first part saying the Great Lakes region. Any animal that has information in that book that's on this list is fair game. Now, we're not going to be creating any questions outside of that book for the Great Lakes region. All of it comes from that.
And what you could always do, like if the
but if you found it in the library and you couldn't buy it or you didn't want to, you could essentially copy all that information down and put that in the field guide that you will be creating for the Latin American species.
So
it is an alternative.
And that's why I asked, because ultimately the questions are about characteristics and things like that are not going to be necessary.
It's up to you whether, because I think some kids actually feel pretty confident having the actual text with them. They know everything is in there. They bookmark things and write little notes in the book. And some kids maybe would feel more confident if they had, instead of two resources in front of them, they had just the one. So it's up to the team, whatever they feel is appropriate for them, because you could essentially create just one field guide, or you could have the actual text and the created one, so they know when they get to a question they could flip to one or the other.
You could always start working on the amphibians and reptiles from the websites first, while you're waiting for the Great Lakes, while you're waiting for the Great Lakes region to arrive.
This list is 2 parts. Like I said, this one, it's an all black text, is for the Great Lakes book. The one that starts by being titled The Rest of the Americas goes from North America outside of the Great Lakes south to South America. And you'll see that there's a lot of blue text in this is because the sheet that you would download has the hyperlinks in them. So you should be able to click them and the website would come up automatically. Now, any information that is on that initial page is what I would be drawing the questions from. So, if there's like a link, you click this and it brings you to another page. I'm not going to draw questions from that because I can't really inform you that I'm choosing that page over just the main one. But if there is any issue at all with one of these websites, please contact the Science Olympiad site and let them know that there might be a dead link, or it says something completely wrong, it links you to a different animal, just so I can correct that. But like I said, all of this information is what I'll be drawing my questions from. So when you're creating a field guide, for me personally, I know when I was in school, writing it down myself helped me learn it. So it very well is probably the case for your students. But I mean, if they just wanted to print off that page, highlight information, and the picture's probably already on there, they can do that. Or like I said, they could write it. They could even draw the pictures if they want, however they feel most comfortable with. The one requirement for that, the created field guide is that it is binded together. So whether that's like a little, the 3-hole binder books, or you actually get the little plastic things that you kind of create like a book out of, I guess. As long as it is binded in there, that's good. We don't want loose things falling out. No loose papers. And so what they'll use this for is that when they come into the room, they're going to start off and there'll be 20 stations, and they'll be allowed to use that as a resource as they answer the 4 to 6 questions at each station. They'll have 1 minute to answer each and every question. But the initial thing, we are going to start off with the tiebreaker first. The tiebreaker is actually a little different. Now, this tiebreaker will actually be fill in the blank, and it's actually going to be audio recordings of frog calls. These frog calls are relating back to the Great Lakes region. There is actually a link when you download this resource off the website. The link, there's a hyperlink in there that says the sounds of Michigan frogs, and it takes you to the AZA website, which is the Association for Zoos and Aquariums. And on that, you click the frogs that are listed. Any frog that is on that initial list is fair game for having the sound recordings. You click it, and it'll take you to an outside source, and there's a little image, and right above that image, there's a thing that says like play sound. You play it, you can practice with it, and it does seem like initially difficult, but once you start to hear it, like each frog tends to sound very different, and a lot of times these frogs are named after the way they sound. So something like, you think like a cricket frog, what do you think it sounds like? Cricket, right? So those are kind of like helpful ways to navigate it.
And to like the frog calls are going to be just frogs from Michigan. They're not going to be frogs from Central or South America. The frog calls are only going to be the ones that you find living in Michigan. And there's I think like maybe 10 or 12, so there's not a whole lot of frog calls to listen. Even going out on a the spring during the spring night, you can start to hear the cricket frogs. You'll hear the chorus frogs. You'll hear the spring peepers. So just going outside at a park in the early springtime, you'll start to hear a lot of these frogs calling. And that'll be also be a good way to practice with your kids as well.
Yeah. So we'll start off with that. We get them in the room. I can't remember if I've gone over this already because the last session I always forget if I've said it already. But so like there'll be tables along the outside. We would walk the kids in, have them follow us basically, and the very first kid that walked in would start at the last station essentially. And then so, if they're going around the room. Now, the station that they start at is already there. The questions and everything would have probably flipped over, just like the sheet that they'll answer on. So what they're going to do with their Scantron is write their team name, team number, but then they will have the fill in the blank page for that tiebreaker, and it'll essentially just be upside down. They go over the quick little last minute rules, and then let them know we're going to proceed with the tiebreaker. They flip that over. We play the calls. Call number 1, fill in the blank. What animal is this? Now, whatever it is titled in the Great Lakes book is what we would want them to write it down. So if it says American bullfrog, we don't want them just to write bullfrog. It needs to be American bullfrog. But if you... I think the sample question is actually on the website. But I mean, for example, you would have something like this sitting at your table for at least the regional. If we can make it to the districts, we'd probably be bringing a lot of like biofacts like turtle shell, snake shed, maybe some figurines that actually represent what the animal looks like. And they'll be asked to identify that. There's probably going to be a lead-in clue, like this is a snake that is often mimicked, but is actually a venomous snake. So they would have to identify that with that like little lead-in clue. And then that series of questions after that, the 4 to 6 questions, would all be pertaining to that one animal. Now, there might be the case where if we have 2 animals that kind of look similar, we would have a picture or a model of each. It's like identify animal A, identify animal B, and then there'll be a mix of questions of one or the other. To try to, because like last year, for example, there was a question about bobcats and lynxes, and we put them together because they look fairly similar. And so they had to answer a series of questions about them.
So an amphibian in Michigan that looks very similar might be an American toad and a Fowler's toad. Like they look, if you just look at them, they look very similar, but like once you learn the identifying characteristics, you can start to recognize, well, that's definitely an American toad, and that's definitely a Fowler's toad. So it wouldn't be like an American toad and a bullfrog at the same station. It would be like an American toad and a Fowler's toad at the same station. And it might be, the first question might be, animal A is what? American toad, coast gray tree frog, leopard frog, cricket frog. Question 2 might be Fowler's toad, leopard frog, gray tree frog, something like that. And then I'll pass these around. So these will probably be the actual items that the kids will see. This one here is a Redeared Slider turtle shell. And when you're looking in the guidebook, there should be clear pictures of the shells and all that. This one here is a box turtle right here. And also too, the shape of these turtle shells is very distinctive. Now, if it's something where this is the shed skin from a black rat snake, to me, a lot of snakes the same size, the shed skin looks very similar. I don't know how to identify a snake just by the snake shed alone. So if it is a snake shed, I'll have a clue with it. So it might be station, let's say 2. I'll have like this snake shed here. The first question might be, this is the largest snake in Michigan. What is it? So if they know the book, they should know like the largest snake in Michigan is, the black rat snake. So there'll be a clue with it if it's something really hard to identify. If it's just a turtle shell, there'll be what turtle is it. If it's just like the shed skin, there'll be a clue with it to help the kids kind of narrow it down. And we won't have any live animals or anything like that at the competition.
The clues, resources, whatever the samples, are they going to be predominantly that type of thing?
They could be a mix,
okay.
like even for the events that we are for sure bringing those, there still might be pictures on there because we might not have something back at the zoo that pertains to that specific animal.
And I have some very realistic snake replicas. Like they're made out of fiberglass, but they're painted to where they look exactly like the real thing. So I'll probably bring some of those.
There'll be a variety of types of things. So it could be like you're saying, like realistic replicas, maybe a toy, pictures, shells, skeletons, sorts of things.
Well, the reason I asked that is because like you brought up, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Like with the turtles, well, you can't have a live turtle, but a lot of the identifying characteristics might be with the body itself, not the shell.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to make it to where you have to identify an animal solely. That it's that difficult that you have to look at their markings on their head, but we don't have that. If anything, we're probably
Well, to me, like
sure.
a lot
But
of
like the turtle shells are very indicative of what the animal is, because being like a painted or a Redeared Slider.
Well, that's what I was kind of thinking of.
They're
very
subtle,
close.
but if you
a painted turtle, for example, is going to be like their shell is going to be like a dark black almost, and it will have like a red or orange around the outside of the shell. Too, and the kids will be able to narrow down, like if they're not sure if it's a Redeared Slider or a painted turtle. If they know the material, they should know that, if they look at like the other questions within the station, that they should be able to narrow down, well, that's definitely not a painted turtle shell, that's a Redeared Slider shell. And for the Redeared Slider, I might have a question. You can find this turtle in Michigan, or true or false, is Redeared Slider native to Michigan? False. So that will be a way for them to narrow it down because painted turtles are native to Michigan. Redeared Sliders are probably descended from someone's pet that they dumped, and if enough people do that, you can now find them in a lot of areas.
No, I was just asking that because of the example you provide with the Redeared Slider shell, because it is so very in my opinion, very close to them.
Yeah, but I mean, that is,
But
that's part of
Redeared is
the
actually a
challenge
really
of.
dead getaway. Certainly I
Yeah,
understand the
but
difference.
that is part of the challenge of the test.
Sure.
Is to make it difficult
Sure.
because we don't want ties, and that's one way to, separate that a little bit.
And two,
But having those
if they,
challenging questions.
just looking at the pictures in the book, there's enough detail within the book itself. Yeah, there's some super close-ups, but there should be enough detail, even in like the description of that particular animal, that they can look at, well, the shell is lacking certain colors that another turtle might have on its shell. Yeah. And two, you can also narrow stuff down to, like, a box turtle, since they live primarily on land, they have like a highly domed shell, where if it's something that lives in water, their carapace is going to be much smoother than something that lives primarily on land. So that will also be another way to kind of narrow stuff down. And something like a snapping turtle, their shells might be this big. Painted turtles, their shells might be that big. Musk turtle shell might be that big. Yeah, a musk turtle shell and a snapping turtle shell, same color, but one that is significantly larger than.
One thing that might help too is if you actually go to the nature centers or the zoo or whatever, where they have these animals, seeing them in person, you'll probably be able to pick it out a little bit more than you can on a text. One thing I want to mention before I forget, because I don't think I mentioned this. So with the tiebreaker, you go through and you answer those questions. If there is indeed another tie after that, it breaks down to, I think it's like the traditional way it is for the written test in the Science Olympiad, where it's the number of 3-point questions that are answered correctly, the number of 2-point questions, and then the number of 1-point questions. I don't think I covered that.
And two, it might seem like there's a lot of information. Yes, there's a lot of information. And like having done it last year, I was thinking that kids are going to come in, be completely overwhelmed because they only have like 8 to 9 seconds per question. But once they've gone through like the district tests and once they've studied, I was amazed at how quick they were able to go through. So you might have a minute per station. Some of those kids were finishing and they'd still have 30 seconds left. So it's not like everyone was completely overwhelmed.
You can tell
Once
they
they've
knew
gone
the
through the
text really
district,
well.
once they practiced at home, like some of the parents or coaches came up with like sample stations of their own, so that way the kids were comfortable with having a 1 minute time period to answer 4 questions, 5 questions, something like that. And to I encourage you to learn the material with your kids, so that way you can kind of quiz each other, and then it's something that you can both learn together. So if you're out, let's say hiking, or if you're out on a boat, you see a turtle, you'll both will know instantly, hey, that's a painted turtle, that's a spiny soft shell, that's a snapping turtle. And just a good way to kind of, for both the kids and the parents, to kind of develop certain skills that they can learn, if they're just out and about.
With the names of the different types, like the turtles and that, there's appears to be like 2 names. I'm just scientific name. Do
So
they need to know both of them? Can you use that as an example?
So what I will have, they should know both, yeah. But they don't, some of them will have some of them might have the same genus, but the species name will be different depending on the species.
So they need to know like the family name as well as.
Just the scientific name and the common name.
Okay.
I'm not gonna go order, hey, can you classify this starting at the phylum level and go all the way down to the species level? It's not gonna be anything like that. But if it's something like, some of them might be, I'll just have, for the blue-spotted salamander, there'll be a picture of the blue-spotted salamander, I'll say, what is this? A might be blue-spotted salamander, B might be mud puppy, C might be four-toed salamander, D might be northern spring salamander for one station. The very next one, if it's, let's say it's the bullfrog, I might have the bullfrog's common name, scientific name, then American toad, and maybe D will be A and B as well.
Will you ever have just the genus species name and
And
not
some of
the
them,
common?
and some of them I might have, just the scientific name too. But I mean, they'll be studying it, so they'll be studying it so much that they might not know how to say it correctly, but they'll be able to recognize just the name of it, because half this the scientific name stuff I don't know how to pronounce the stuff, so for me I just learn the common names for everything, and then you start to recognize some of the scientific names after you've studied it long enough. And two, it's not it's not meant to be overwhelming. It's something that don't try to pound your kids. You're going to sit down when you're going to learn this material, and then you can go outside and play. Because for me, like when my parents did that, I was like instantly just lost any interest in it. So work with them. Just have it so it's fun. So that way they don't get discouraged right away. Have them so it looks so it's fun, and just help them to realize that you might not get first place, but hey, a lot of the stuff that you're learning, it'll be useful for when you're older. Because when I was younger, I had no idea what a lot of turtles were. I was just out there catching them. And then as I got older, then I learned the names, and then I learned, the information about them. But having, knowing what it is first, to me, like when I'm outside, being able to recognize what something is, to me that's so cool. Like just being able to walk through the forest, being able to rate the trees, the wildflowers, the birds, all that. To me, like when you're outside, like everything just starts to make sense more when you know what it is. You don't have to know everything about it, but just being able to recognize something, to me, is something that's pretty interesting. Anything else?
One more question then, just location too, just the general location where they are, like North America, South America, or would you want to know?
That's a
like, the
potential
states?
question, like
Like the
where.
western states, the.
Well, I'm not gonna,
Eastern,
the questions that I came up with,
You get like
so many maps.
So if we're talking about like the rest of the Americas, I could have like the western diamondback rattlesnake is found in A, Texas, B, Argentina, C, Michigan, and so on, and something of that nature. I wouldn't pin it to, like, it all depends. I mean, it could be really difficult if you word it a certain way, but I wouldn't go that route. I would make it more
I think
obvious.
if you open up the book, there's a map, but I think it also lists, like, with words, like, Michigan, central, it might be something like central Wisconsin. So they won't be looking at a map and expecting to be able to recognize all the states within that map. I believe in the book, I think it's also written out as well. So they just have to know like the written out section of being able to look at a map and know like, well, that's Wisconsin, that's Minnesota, this is Michigan, that's Ohio, that's New York, kind of thing. It'll be listed out right in the book. They won't have to memorize the maps or anything like that.
And the field guide that they create, is that just like
So-
a useful tool for them to?
We wanted to kind of make it, instead of just like reading and memorizing, I wanted them to actually kind of create something that there's like value in that. And so by creating the field guide off that second half of the list, I felt like one, it'll kind of encourage them to learn something more. They'll probably take some ownership and pride into creating that. And so whatever is listed on here is what they should be making that field guide. If you want to add the Americas in there, you're more than welcome to. Or, sorry, the Great Lakes region. But I can't remember if I told you or not. Make sure you go to the website and re-download this list. It was updated within the last 2 days. Because I know there was like some broken links, and the way some, especially amphibians, the way something is named can be very different from region to region. So something that we call, I don't know, example X at the zoo is something different if you go to the Southwest. And so I had to go through and make sure that whatever we wanted you guys to study was matching with what it was called on the website. Because you could type in one animal and you search it and you couldn't find them.
It's 20 stations, right?
Yes. In addition to, I guess, the extra, not extra credit, the
fraud
tiebreakers,
calls.
yeah.
Right. But there's 20 stations. Gosh, I didn't even count how many animals were in the list.
Yeah. So there is,
100.
there's potential for maybe some animals to be left out. There's also maybe potential for animals to be both at the district and
Yeah, so the animals
regional.
are going to vary. So you might have, there might be, let's say, the district and the regional, there might be one animal that's the same, but pretty much for the most part, it's going to be different animals at the district and different animals at the regional.
We try to, every time we create it, we try to make sure that we have enough animals that there isn't a lot of overlap.
I understand. So I guess really my question was, didn't let me finish. Was at each station, it's not going to be a collection of maybe 5 different animals at one station.
No, each station
Is-
itself would be like, this is what's
Right.
at your station,
Right,
identify
okay.
this animal, and then the next few questions are about that. But there is the possibility, if there was two snakes that look nearly identical and we have them both on the list.
That it
maybe
might be the
two.
comparison.
So if it's
in the
like,
exactly.
for example, if
Right.
it's something like this, the coral snake and the king snake, looking at them, they look exactly the same, but the color pattern is different on them. So A might be, the coral snake question. Station 1 might be, or question 1 might be about the coral snake. Question 2 might be about the king snake.
And the probably about 50-50 between the Great Lakes list.
Yeah, so
and
there's gonna be
American.
10 stations about the Great Lakes and 10 stations about rest
And they'll be
of the-
intermingled, so it's not like
Yeah,
going
right,
from
right,
1 to
right.
10.
Yeah. I was just wondering about representation.
So, but all the calls are just frogs and toads that you find in Michigan.
For the calls, you said they had to write the name.
Just the common name
Just the
that is
common name.
referred to in the book.
In the book, that didn't represent in the book or on the site where the sound.
Oh, okay.
And then may not be expressed.
Yeah, just because they're using that book as their resource. And the book does have descriptions of how the vocalizations sound. So that might even help by studying that and then hearing it. Because that might help you remember when you hear it, oh, they said they sounded like a bunch of ticks in a row or something like that. But the way that animal is named in the book is what we want, just to kind of have the continuity. Yes.
Does spelling count?
No.
No. Yeah, I wouldn't worry about spelling at all. As long as we know what the kid is trying to say, we're good with that.
And to like some of the stuff, like, for example, like a leopard frog, a good way to, remember what it looks like, it has spots, just like a leopard. So it's like some of the stuff is named, how they look. Redeared sliders, they have the red ear. Painted turtles look like they're painted, almost. Soft shells have a soft shell. Snapping turtles, are known to bite. So that just, kind of correlating like those things together will also help.
It's
the
typically
kids
how they
kind of-
look or how they sound.
Yeah, will help them learn those different things. The red spotted newt has red spots on it. Tiger salamanders have stripes. Not the same color as a tiger, but they have stripes like a tiger. Marbled salamander looks like marble. The spotted salamander has spots.
Anything else?
For the field guide that they make themselves, what types of limitations are there, what they can put in there?
So anything that is on that website that is linked, it's like fair game. I wouldn't worry about going outside of that because I'm going to be creating questions from that link. The biggest limitation is no loose materials. We want it binded. So whether you buy like a trapper keeper or whatever, the 3 holes, you can put it in that, or you
Just staple it together.
Yeah, you could staple down the ream of it. You could use, I can never remember what those things are called, like the little like plastic binders that is
Spiral bound?
Yeah, the spiral bound things. So there's different avenues for it. Just make sure it's all together.
And so for like the field guides the kids make, like the kids could just print off all the information from the website, and that could be their field guide that they use. And then you could just staple all that stuff together, so that way they have it with them all the time.
Do you not include pictures?
Yeah, so when you print it should print off like with the pictures, if there's any maps.
So
All that stuff should
one
be-
thing is sometimes there's different like kind of color phases or color morphs for certain animals. It may be helpful to actually Google a couple images. That's one thing that might help you just to kind of see different color ranges of them. But for the most part, I mean, all of the written information is coming from those websites, and there's usually a pretty good representation of what the animal commonly looks like. But I mean, there are some frog species, I can't remember off the top of my head if I particularly chose one of those, but some of them have like slightly different color morphs where the same but a little different. It's the same with almost every animal, really. There's a variety of.
And for the stuff, for the ones that I'm doing, the pictures that I'm using are pictures very similar to in the book as well. So like they're, like let's say like a juvenile black rat snake has a lot of stripes. An adult is almost black. Yeah, I'm gonna have a picture of the adult version, not the juvenile, so that way the kids aren't really confused. So what they look like in the book, they'll appear on the test very similar to that picture.
Other questions? Good. think we have 5 minutes left if you have any last minute questions. If not, you're free to go.